All right, we are incredibly lucky to welcome on to Theater in College Hoops a two-time All-ACC defensive team member, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year for the 2017-2018 season, a rising star in the coaching ranks, who is now an assistant coach at his Virginia Cavaliers, the legend from Lilburn. We got Isaiah Wilkins joining us today. Isaiah, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. Really appreciate you jumping on. Hey, we're only about 60 days away from tip.
Yeah,
It's right around the corner.
that feels further away than it is, but that's true. Yeah, it's right there.
How's the off season been?
No, it's been good. Guys working hard. I mean, you know how summer goes and kind of early fall, but yeah, team's working hard and looking forward to the start.
Yeah, everyone's looking forward to seeing what the ACC has to offer,
Yeah.
and especially your team as well. We're going to get into all of that. But first, what I want to do, Isaiah, is really dive into your background, get a better understanding of that, because the amount of guests that we've spoken to, I think it's so important to understand the origins. And so I think it's really neat hearing recruiting stories. That's where I want to start. So you're in high school, all right? Who's calling you? Who's sitting on your couch? And why ultimately did you go with Tony Bennett and the Cavs?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty cool how it all worked out. I think I was recruited late, like I was, kind of a late bloomer in a way. I remember speaking to Georgia State, like in state first, which was a lot of Georgia State. They showed me a lot of love early, and then it's funny. It's funny hearing it now. Virginia kind of got in because they were going to look at a teammate of mine who they were recruiting, and I happened to play well one of the games that they were there looking at my teammate in AAU, and from there, I played well one time, and they came to another game, and I had another good game, and that's kind of how it worked out with Virginia. But my process was pretty quick. I didn't love the recruiting process; like it kind of got overwhelming, and so I took one official visit to UVA and was done within probably. It's a running joke. I was probably done committed within a couple hours of being there. So mine was pretty quick. Malcolm Brogdon was my teammate in high school, or not teammate. He was on the team in high school, the varsity team, and I went to the school too. So I knew him, and they made it feel like home, and I was done rather quickly, I'd say.
That's incredible. Wow. I feel like a lot of recruits these days, and maybe even prior to your time, they really want to enjoy that process,
Yeah.
elongate it for as much as possible. You were like, hey, let me make quick work of this.
It was cool. Like when you first start getting your recruited and you get all like we did, the letters came to the house, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Like, I got a letter from this school, whatever. But like once the phone call started and like the messages, I was like, all right, I'm not going to drag this out because this is not my ideal situation. And I found a great home and knew it and kind of took it before somebody else did.
Clearly worked out, made the right decision, it seems. Let me rewind just a little bit, though.
Yeah.
Was that Ron Hunter that was
Yeah,
recruiting
it
you at Georgia
was
State?
Purdue, that was the assistant that spoke to me a bunch, and it was Ron Hunter. And I lived in the area, so I would go up there for camp and go hang out. I mean, they were great dudes. And then, and so like I still keep in touch with some of those guys today. But yeah, it was awesome.
Was that after? So you keep me honest on my timeline here.
Yep.
Was that after? Were you recruited after the Baylor upset, where Georgia State upset Baylor? Was that the year?
I think before. I think it was before. RJ was there. He had just gotten there, I think, around that time. I can't remember exactly, but like Ryan Harrow was there, and like for dudes from Georgia, like he had a hoop mixtape that like was the greatest thing back when that was like really big. So like it was cool to see those guys, and some of my teammates like Devin Mitchell went and played there, so they got Atlanta guys, but I thought they were great. Like the way they recruited, the way they they were just cool. Like they were in the city, they were cool, and not too much, but still showed you love.
So it's so interesting, Isaiah, because you mentioned that you went to UVA's campus and then you made the decision, but there has to be some sort of connection that you felt with Tony Bennett. And we're going to get into what it was like playing for him and now serving on his staff. But as someone in high school, why did it click with Tony Bennett? What were those conversations like?
It's funny though. I remember my first recruiting conversation, because I was getting a lot of calls from coaches, and they were telling me that I was, the greatest, and I knew I could play, but like I knew I wasn't ready like leaving college or leaving high school to go play in college immediately and like, play a lot of minutes. I was skinny. And so I knew, like, I was aware of that. And so when coaches were calling saying, hey, look, we'll take you and you'll start on I was like, I'm probably not ready for that. Like I'd seen it close up, visiting games and stuff. But actually our first conversation with Coach Bennett, he called me and we talked about music for like the entire call. So we didn't even really talk basketball. It was just like, hey, I want to get to know you. What type of music do you like? I was at a tournament actually when he called. He was like, hey, what kind of music do you like? Yada, yada, yada. And I hung up and I was like, man, like that was cool. Like he didn't lie to me. He didn't promise me anything. It was just like, hey, look, I want to get to know you and let's see if you're a good fit. And so that, for me, that stuck out. And him and Coach Sanchez, who recruited me, did a great job. And I felt like I knew those guys really well, and I knew they were going to tell me stuff that was real, and that's what I needed as a player. Like that's how my high school coach was, and so I was like, man, this is great, and kind of it happened pretty quick, but it was a good deal.
That's an awesome nugget. Do you remember what exact music was discussed? I mean,
I don't remember what I said, but he loves Boys to Men. Like I remember him saying that to me on the phone. I was like, what are you talking about, Boys to Men? Like my mom and dad listen to that, but. Yeah, I actually remember that. I think we're in Florida, and I remember that conversation just because like it was so rare for me to have talked to a coach about like something other than basketball or whatever. So
definitely. So self-awareness wrapped up your recruiting journey pretty quickly. I mean, when I say self-awareness, you're over here telling me I don't know if I'm able to start. You don't sound like the prototypical senior in high school.
No, it's just like we had a good year. Like we had a good team. We won the state championship 2 years in a row. But like I'd gone to games. Like I went to an unofficial to Georgia, and I saw Florida and Georgia play, and was in the tunnel while those guys were walking out, while Florida was walking out. And that was like, will you get and the 5-man Young, and I was like, whoa, golly, like dudes are huge, and that's kind of my position. And I was like, man, I got some work to do. So I'd seen it up close and was like, I believe in myself. I believe in my game, but there's going to be a big kind of learning curve that I need to be ready for. So,
yeah. And we're going to get into your amazing playing days for sure at Virginia. It's funny, whenever someone brings up Patrick Young, I always, because I've seen him play live, and he went up against Caleb Tarzewski. And
yeah.
I remember when Caleb Tarzewski was backing people down, people would move back.
Yeah.
Patrick Young was the only one who didn't. And I'm like, this guy is made out of like marble.
Unbelievable, right? The dude's incredible. Like watching that and seeing that up close was like, wow, like that's high level. Like
that's a big boy, big boy. So Isaiah, I'm curious to know now about your coaching journey. Okay. So there's a good deal of coaches that have obviously played at a high level like yourself as well. Take us through your thought process of having to put the basketball down. I mean, you were a pro, having to put the basketball down and then transitioning to the bench. What was that like?
So it happened again quickly. I was in Germany finishing up my season with Radio Farm Ulm. And we were preparing I was working with my agent to figure out, are we going to stay in Germany or, we moving? And I had been talking to Coach Bennett and the staff on and off. And one night he called and just said, hey, listen, like, just want to get your initial thoughts. Are you interested in coming back and being a grad assistant and kind of getting your coaching career started? He was like, look, if you have years to play, don't, because I know like how important that is. I've done it, but if you have any interest at all, like at least ask around and see if it's something that you'd be interested in doing. And again, like I got off the phone and I was like, or while he was on the phone, I put him on mute and I was talking to my wife because she was sitting, across the couch. And I was like, look, like we'd always talked about like, what if, one day we end up back in Virginia, like, would that be something that we would do? And it was kind of like, yeah. And so I was talking to her, I was like, what do we think? And she was like, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a good idea. And so he's like, all right, well, let me know what you're thinking. I was like, yeah, all right, cool, I'm in. He's like, no, like take your time, take the week and think on it. And I hung up, called family and kind of told them the situation and then texted him back maybe an hour later. I was like, yeah, I'll see you like when I get home. So it was pretty cool, pretty quick and pretty cool. And I jumped in. I think I was at home for a week resting and then just jumped into practice, like kind of figuring out what they needed from me because it was a big adjustment, but it happened pretty quick. And it was pretty cool how it works out. Like you know, a place like this, you never want to be too far away from, and any opportunity to be back is like, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, was it difficult to come to terms with like the finality almost of your playing career, and this is a whole new career trajectory, or does that kind of go into the rapidness, I suppose, of that decision?
Not really, because I play still. Like I get down with them. So practice and like scrimmages, open gym at the time, I was a G. I can't do that anymore. But like anything live, I was in. So it wasn't like I had put the ball down. I just used practice as like my game, or like, you know, I'm going against these guys every day. So I was able to like, that was a big part of me coming back. It was like, look, you'll be on the scout team. And so I was like, I can still get to play too. Like I'm in. It was a pretty, that made it easier to know that like I would still be able to play.
Best of both worlds for sure.
Right.
I've been lucky enough to chat with guys who have played overseas. I've spoken with Giddy Potts, Nate Sestina most recently, Omar Samhan, and you hear about it. I mean, I don't I think even casual basketball fans understand how wild it is
Yeah.
overseas. You got guys like Luka Doncic who's playing in the NBA being like, it's not that big a
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Any personal experiences that you've encountered or anything wild?
No, I loved it. That was the hardest thing, was like I love being overseas and playing over there, and like the fan support, it's different. It's just different. But I think I played in New Zealand my first year out, and that was incredible. Like I got on a good team, and it was awesome. My first European game was like my first, like I think, introductory to like what Europe was, introduction to what Europe was. We played, I was on a small team in Poland called Stargard Gdańsk, and we played the team that won the championship the year before at their place for the first game. So you know, they were doing like their ceremony, like their, you know, we just won a championship ceremony, but I didn't know that they had just won. So we have a shoot around the day of the game, and we hop on a bus. It was probably 4 or 5 hour drive. So we get on the bus and we go play, and my teammates are like this is the best arena in Poland. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like I played in some good arenas before, like in college. I'm, you know, fan stuff doesn't do a whole lot for me. But when I went out there, like it was right when Casa de Papel, the Money Heist came out. So all of the fans are dressed in the red suits with the Dali mask, and it was insane. Like it was the flares, and I was and they beat us by like 50 points, and we got on the bus and went home, and I was like, all right, this is a little different. Like they were really good, and it was just an introduction to like Europe, and so for me it was really cool. But yeah, some good stories.
I love those types of stories, man. That's a really good look behind the curtain of what not
Yeah,
only just, you know, international ball is, but specific countries
yeah.
have those crazy fans. So that's really interesting. But what I want to do, Isaiah, is now pivot to your playing days in college, okay? Because you've been a part of some amazing teams. You obviously, I read off those accolades. I almost was out of breath, man, with how great you were. But let me start here. As a player on those tremendous Virginia teams, was there pressure to get the job done and win a title as you guys continued to rack up wins? Did you feel that at all?
I mean, I think my first and second year, it was just about making sure that I was doing my job to help, you know, those older guys who were leading the way. Like my first and second year for sure was just like, I'm jumping on, I'll do my part, and they would take us, they would carry us. But as you get older, and you're kind of like, I want to make sure that we, or at least in my mind, I didn't want to be like, look, these guys did so much and they taught us so much and they took care of us, and then we dropped the ball when they left. It was kind of like you want to like hold the rope and like show that, you know, your teams can also compete. You know, once you start losing, you know, your Malcolm Brogdons, your Anthony Gills, yada, on and on and on. Like, and so I think there was a little bit of that of like, I want our teams to be good too, like they were. So a little bit, yeah.
So it sounds to me then like the pressure, I hadn't even thought about this. So this is a bit eye opening for me. You had mentioned hold the rope. What about external factors, students, media, of covering how great your ascension really was? Did that factor in at all, or were those walls really thick?
I think more thick. Like the coaching staff was never like that about pressure. You know, Coach Bennett's big thing was like just run your race with like your horse blinders on, and I bought into that. And so not so much from fans or or media or anything like that. It was just like internal. Like I want to be as good as we can for, the guys that were before us. And it was a, an in-house thing, and we took care of each other, but not so much from the outside, I wouldn't say.
So Isaiah, I'm looking back at Virginia's rich basketball tradition, but in my estimation, I feel like your team and your core group of guys really laid the foundation for how we look at UVA today, which is a top 3 seed in the NCAA tournament and a threat to go deep every single year. Do you feel like you were part of that fabric and launching the Cavaliers basketball program to maybe that next level? I mean, you got Ralph Sampson who's come through, of course, but I'm not sure I've seen a Virginia basketball team consistently this great year over year over year.
I always tell people, like, I think I got in, the year I came in was the year that they had just figured it out, because the year before I got there, they made an Elite 8 run and lost a crazy game to Michigan State. I think it was in the Garden. But when I was coming in, they were already like a machine, and it was like, all right, find your spot and, fall in line. And so I got lucky in that way where, I would say from there on, I just kind of followed as I saw. So I followed Darian Atkins, who was my big man leader my first year of college, and who I learned from Mike Scott, and on and on and on. But I got in at the right time, I think, is really what happened, and we were able to kind of keep momentum rolling. But it's pretty cool to see it, how it's all unfolded.
It's very neat, very neat. So you've mentioned some names now. All right.
Yeah.
I want to dive in. This is more for our listeners, because obviously you know who you played with, but my God, Isaiah, some of those rosters were loaded, man. You've played with so many wonderful players. Brogdon, Parentes, I don't think we've mentioned him yet. Ty Jerome, obviously a consummate professional. Diakite, Kyle Guy, who we're going to get to. Jay Huff, DeAndre Hunter. What were those practices like? You got to give us a real inside look into that.
I mean, it depends on what year. Usually the first year, you can tell somebody they just struggle with, the basics. But
give us all 4. We're here for all of them.
My first year, I always tell our guys now, like, when they feel like they're having it rough, I'm like, look, if you want me to, I'll pull clips of my first year, like my first summer in, where every day I was matched up with Anthony Gill, Mike Tobey, or Darian. I had no shot. Like I think my first summer, for like, we do 2 sessions, like 8 weeks. I think I scored in scrimmages and live play, I think twice. And one of them was like, it was an accident and it went in. And one of them, I made one good move. So it was like and they weren't taking it easy. It was like, I'm establishing myself. So it was great for me to come in and basically be killed every day in practice, because it got me ready for, what was to come. So I think more bigs, because I didn't really guard the guards. Malcolm and the guards, and they all kind of did their thing, but I'm thinking inside, like, my first year was rough. Second year, a little better. Darian's gone, so I was on the team with AG now for the scrimmages, because I got to start later on in the year. And so it made it a lot easier, because now I'm going against Mamadi, who was, a freak athlete, and some other guys. And then my third year was the year DeAndre came. And I think that was the first time I'd been like, whoa, like, this dude's really good. Recruiting visit, him, Ty, Kyle, and Jay all visited at the same time. I think some of them were committed. I think Dre might not have been, but they all ended up coming, and they wanted to play one-on-one during the visit. They wanted to go to the gym and work out, and they ended up playing one-on-one, and they're playing good ones. And I'd seen them at Top 100 camp, because Top 100 camp used to be in Charlottesville. And so you'd work it, like the players would work it and get, extra money from the Top 100 camp. After you log your hours and all that stuff. But watching them, I was like, at first I was like, what do we do? Like, Ty and Kyle, they look like they're 10 years old. They're small and whatever. But Dre, I jumped in the one-on-one just to mess around. And Dre made a move. Like, his move was like, he put the ball between his legs before dribbling. And he just took off and, like, banged it. And I went back to the apartment, and I told Jack Salt, who was my roommate, like, hey, these dudes are really good. Like, this is a different caliber than I think I'd been used to for a first year. And obviously they've all lived up to all of that. But you could tell early on with those four, it was like, like this is a talent increase.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's something else. Wow. Yeah. I mean, you see them all now in the pros doing well. And Jack, look, you throwing it back to what we were talking about with Zeus and Patrick Young. Jack Salt's another guy who
Yeah, big fella.
I don't think he's moving much.
No, he was strong. I mean, and that's what his pride was like, I'm not, we weren't very good offensive players, but defensively and he was like, I'm a wall and that's who I am. And he was big time.
Yeah. So a foundation is set. You guys are winning at an incredible clip. I would argue, and statistically, you ran the ACC with an iron fist. Honestly, just winning all those games. But we got to talk about UMBC, Isaiah, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you've answered this ad nauseum over the course of your career. But for me and our listeners, let me start with this. What were the days leading up to that game? The reason I ask that is because, first of all, I'm always interested in what tournament prep looks like.
Right.
That you hear your name called by Greg Gumbel, and then you go up to the game. But sometimes when things precede a loss, vibes are off, or
Right.
something felt a little different. Anything that you can point to? What were the days leading up to that?
No, I think the good thing about this staff and Coach Bennett is like we prepare like normal for every game. So like we knew we usually do what 2 days or 2 days before each game if we can. So we heard our name called. We probably practiced the next 2 days, traveled, practiced, and game. Something like whatever, it was normal, like what we do for every tournament that I played in. So vibes were normal. Obviously, Dre had messed up his wrist, so he was out, but we knew that it wasn't like we knew he was going to be out after Carolina game because he got the x-rays. So we had days to prepare like normal. We practiced. Jack hurt Jay Huff and I think broke his arm or something like that. So like normal days, like that's a normal thing with Jack was like, you just got to be ready. But no, it was pretty, I think, normal prep. We prepared like we normally would. And from what I can remember, it was just not another game, but like you prepared like it was, a game.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people forget what a crucial role DeAndre Hunter's injury played in that. I mean, can you put into words how significant that injury really was?
The dude was coming into his own. Like I think people started to see, because I think he struggled a little bit early on, but just people were starting to see like how good he was. And I don't know what the stats were. I just know he was playing a lot and obviously was a big part of our thing. With that being said, we played games without him, like maybe early on. So it was like, for sure it was really big, but I don't want that to be like an excuse of like, the game and how they played. Like we would have loved to have him, don't get me wrong, but we didn't, and we played the game. So,
Yeah. And so at what point in that game, when you're in the heat of battle, at what point in that game did you feel like it was slipping away?
21-21 at halftime, or it sounds insane, but I think that's what it was. It was like 21-21 at half. And I felt like we were moving in, like the game felt like it was going in slow motion. Like it's hard to describe. Like we were, I honestly don't remember a bunch of the game, but I just remember 21-20 at halftime. The game felt like it was going slow motion. The player spoke at halftime. Was like, look, we got to pick it up. Not for like, we don't want to be the first 116, but for us to be playing the ball, we got to pick it up. We got to play better. Second half starts. I think I go for a steal, I dive, I get a foul, I have my third, I come out. Devin does something, he's in foul trouble, he comes out, but we're still playing. But at some point, like the threes start raining and you look up and you're like, oh, like that's 14-point game. Like, like we gotta pick it up. And now we're doing some things uncharacteristically of like just trying to figure out, how to work this out as players. And the coaching staff is obviously doing a great job trying to get us back in the game. But I think once you start to look up and you're in double digits and time is ticking down, it's like 16 minutes. Now you're like at 9 minutes and you can't break double digits. It was kind of like, it's happening. Like, so I think that about then is like, you look up and you're like, whoa, like we're not getting stops and we're not shrinking the lead. So.
Yeah, I think that was the same with the viewers as well. Just that eerie March Madness feeling, right? And I don't want to belabor this point, because you were on the tough side of it, but personal emotions for you post game in that locker room, what were they like? Just you personally.
Yeah, I mean, obviously devastated. I tell this to people, I don't mind talking about UMBC at all because I think it's it's history. It's crazy how after the game I was like devastated just because like that team was the closest team that I played on in my life from like little kid to now. Like we were super tight knit, and so for it to end in such a sad way for us, it was kind of like everybody was sad, and it wasn't embarrassed so much that it was a 116. I think I would have had that same reaction if we lost at any other point. It was just like, man, like I'll never get to play with this team again, and that hurt. And it was my last game at UVA, so those two things were like it really hurt. Obviously, I wanted to do media and like answer, like you don't want to. I didn't want to do that, but it was hard to say like that was it, and that's how it ended. And we got blown out, so it's like that's how it ended. I won't play with this squad again, and I know that's like hard for the city of Charlottesville and the fans and all that stuff too. So
The finality of it all really hits like a ton of bricks.
Man, because it was done. It's over. There's nothing like we don't practice again, and yeah, that was rough. But move on.
And honestly, Isaiah, that's why I really can't stand when people are like, these kids don't care. I remember when I saw, I think it was De'Aaron Fox and Bam.
Yeah,
after they lost to UNC, just inconsolable. And throughout the entire season, and they know that they're going to be lottery picks.
Yeah, exactly.
You realize how much this really means to them. And again, the finality of it all is just a gut punch.
I think we all just hugged each other. We were just going around hugging each other and just saying like, sorry, like, I'm sorry that's all we could get out, while you're crying and stuff. But like, I'm sorry that's how it was. But I mean, yeah, the sun came up and, it was a wild night, I think, hotel-wise, but the sun came up and, I don't think many of us watched the rest of that year's March Madness, but obviously good things happened following. So
yeah, and we're going to get into that as well. But real quick, before we move off this game, I think I don't have as close of a relationship clearly or the access that you do with Tony Bennett. I'm curious to know his message in the locker room because all we saw were how graceful in defeat he was with the media and what a remarkable leader he was in his words. What was his message in that locker room?
I can't remember a whole lot from. I don't even know if I was listening. I think I was all over the place. But I mean, the message was, it's okay. Like you got, it'll be okay. The sun will come up. It's gonna be all right. And obviously he was upset too, but he just took care of us and told us, like, look, it's gonna be all right. We're gonna be fine. It's only so much you can say in that situation. But from what I remember in between, losing myself was like, it'll be, we've got you guys. We'll be fine. It's hard, but the sun will come up, type of thing.
So this then sets up the greatest redemption story. Yeah, definitely college basketball, potentially in all of sports. I'm going to tap into your emotions again, Isaiah. Yeah. You don't seem like one of these old heads who gets bitter and upset when the younger generation achieve that success. But validate that for me. What were your emotions when?
So I'm going to walk you through the games. So the first game that I'm following the season, like I went back to the team before I left to go to the training camp for the Hornets. And I was just spending time with the guys and wishing them luck. Fast forward a lot of months. First game, they're playing Gardner-Webb. One of my old high school teammates plays for Gardner-Webb, which was it was just weird to think about.
Who was it?
Eric Jameson was. Okay. I think he's a 3-4 man, and they're playing Gardner-Webb. I'm in Greensboro. I'm playing for the Swarm, and I cut the game on, and they're struggling. And I cut the game off, and I'm like, I was with my wife, and I'm like, no, we're not. I cannot do it again. Like, I cannot watch this again. We're not watching it. Like, I think I'm like, I'm bad luck. Like, we're not watching it. And so I cut the game off, and we went and did something else for an hour. I checked the ESPN on my phone, and they were winning. And I was like, all right, we got to the first one. They'll be fine. Like, the boys will be able to breathe. In between that time, while their games were going, I signed a contract to go to New Zealand. And so I traveled, I think during the second game when they played Oklahoma, I believe it was. And okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. So then
no. Throw all the detail you can, Isaiah. I don't have their route up in front of me.
I'm pretty sure that's right. They played Oklahoma, I think, in the next game. So the next thing that I remember is they're playing Auburn. I'm now in New Zealand, which I don't even know how many hours apart it was, but I remember we were playing a preseason tour or preseason kind of scrimmages. And we just played a game and we stopped at a little restaurant in New Zealand on the coast or something like that. And the Auburn game is on. It's like crunch time Auburn game because we had just played a game, so we missed a lot of the game. And my entire team is huddled over the phone watching the March Madness game on somebody's iPhone, and I sat all the way like on the other side of the restaurant just by myself and just was like trying to eat my food because it made me nervous. Like I just wanted them to get it so bad. And so one of my teammates was like, "Oh, like there's a foul. Your teammate got fouled 3 free throws." And I was like, "Who got fouled?" And they said Kyle got fouled. And I said, "Okay, well, game over." And they're like, "Oh no, like, do you want to bet? I was like, "Yeah, bro, like let's bet right now." I bet he makes all of them. So he makes all 3. They win, and I'm over the moon. Like I'm not showing a whole lot of emotion. I'm still nervous in the restaurant. Championship game.
You don't. Virginia doesn't make it easy on their fans with the wins. Dude, even
I think it was like cardiac calves or cardiac who, whatever. I didn't understand it until I was done playing. I wake up early in the morning in New Zealand, like probably 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and I'm FaceTiming Devin. I FaceTime Devin Hall a lot throughout the games just to have somebody else to talk to who like had experienced it and would be nervous as I was. And he was at the game, and I was like yes, like at least our guys are there. Like Justin Anderson was there, he was there. A bunch of guys were there, and I just watched the game in the living room in New Zealand, kind of by myself. And I felt the ups and downs, but once they won it, I just felt so relieved. Like I was so happy that they've been able to do that. Because one thing is like Devin and I, like we experienced it, but then it was kind of over. I went to New Zealand and nobody knew or nobody, I wasn't. And those guys live that every day. And so I was like, oh, like, yes, like they did it. I was happy for the program, happy for Coach Bennett and the guys. Like they got that kind of off their back, and now it's a part of the story. But like there is at least that like they got it done. So it was fun to watch, but definitely stressful.
So much to unpack from that run. First of all, personal story of mine. I was with my future in-laws at that point. We were in Tahoe, and we were going out to a nice dinner at this Italian restaurant during the UVA Purdue game. So first of all, I'm already upset that we're even going out. I'm like, this is the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are we doing? But fine, I can't, what am I going to say that to my father-in-law? No. So me and my sister-in-law's husband, they're waiting to seat us. And so they finally seat us about 5 seconds before the Diakite shot. And I was like, I'll sit down in like 2 seconds. Just like, let me see this final play. And I'm glad I did, because that was truly, I mean, what was going through your mind during that?
I have
good for you.
I have no memory of that game. I went back and watched it later, but we must have had a game in New Zealand or something. That's the only game I have no memory. I just remember looking at the stats after, and it's hard. Like we took pride in it being hard to score against us. I don't know how many points Carson Edwards had. I was like, I said to like somebody who's looking, I was like, this dude has to be a monster to get. He had to have 40 or something like that. To get that's like 80 points. That's like 90 points for us. Is like he must have fried, because Dre's on that team. Dre's one of the best defenders. Like I think like if I think about Dre, I'm like he's really wingspan. He's 6'8", athletic. Who guarded him? That's what I was thinking. Like Kihei, I know he's a good defender because they went looking for that. Kihei, Dre, like who guarded this man to get 40? Like that was my first thought.
Well, that Purdue team could shoot the leather off the ball. I think the round before in the Sweet 16, Ryan Klein absolutely torched Tennessee in Louisville, if memory serves. But I mean, that was an incredible game. And then, I actually have a good friend, and He's come on the podcast a couple times. Mike Burgomaster. He's over at Auburn. He's an assistant coach there. I'm like, hey, was that a foul on Kyle Guy? Was that a foul on Kyle Guy, Isaiah?
Yeah, you got to give my man space to land. It's funny.
Okay.
A lot of those guys from Auburn are guys from Georgia who I grew up kind of playing against, like Harper and Brown. Like those were guys that so it was so weird to watch the games and think like it all come full circle for like, it was cool. That's a foul. He got to give I'm rolling with my guys on that one.
Ice water in guys' veins as well. But let me pivot again to Tony Bennett. Okay. So everything that I can gather on him, he never gets too high, never gets too low. He doesn't seem like this guy who's out for revenge or anything like that. What do you think? And maybe you discussed with him. Do you think he felt some serious personal vindication at all, or was it just business as usual?
I don't know. I think it's hard to just be business as usual on that point. Like I think that they did a good job of like, that was last year. Like that's a different thing, but like human nature, you feel some of that. Like I felt it watching the Gardner-Webb game, and I can only imagine with those guys. I've never sat down and talked with those guys about it, but I think you got to feel something. But no, I think he does a good job of preparing guys to be like, look, just go out, do what we practiced. If you don't, we'll take care of you. Like you'll be fine. If you do, great. We'll continue to build. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very well put, Isaiah. And the reason I asked that is because the clip that always plays in my mind after Virginia beats Texas Tech, right?
Yeah.
After Tony gets his championship, he slams that sticker on the board.
Yeah.
I mean, and just nails it in there. So I was like, I think he had a little bit extra oomph in that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's cool to get there, but with that story and that history, like, yeah.
So I mentioned your accolades, and you even said you focused much of your attention on the defensive end, which led to 2 all-defensive teams and ACC Player of the Year. Let me ask you, Isaiah, what in your eyes makes a great defender?
So I think the first couple things that come to mind are like, obviously effort. So, you hear coaches say all the time, like defense is just effort or whatever the phrase is. I think that some of that is true. Guys who are willing to, stay continuous, make a third effort, fourth effort, fifth effort when it's required, I think will end up being the guys who are, the most continuous, the most, I think, competitive in that aspect. I also think another thing, and I don't know if this is, I don't know how you build this, but anticipation, I think is huge defensively. So like I focused a lot on defense. And a lot of it was because I was playing with great offensive players. I think the thing that helped me a lot was like my ability to kind of anticipate what was going to happen and try to clean it up beforehand. And I think like you think about Reese Beekman now, like his anticipation is unbelievable. The guy, like you think the ball's going one way and then he has it. And like quick hands, stuff like that. Like I think a lot of that is anticipation. And then the third thing I think is just like really studying your opponent to know like, hey, you don't want to know every single thing and be thinking while you're out there, but know enough to say like, if I'm guarding this guy, he's going to do this. If I'm guarding this guy, he has these tendencies. I think really good defenders take their matchups personally that way.
Man, and the best defenders that I see, they do that throughout the course of the game, right? And when you're at that under 4 timeout, how difficult really, I mean, it looks so difficult to put all 3 of those ingredients in the pot, let's say with 2-3 minutes left, where your effort's still there, where your anticipation is still there, and then the mental fortitude to say, damn, I got like Zion Williamson or some other freak in the ACC, Cam Reddish. I'm naming Duke players, but there's too long of a list.
Yeah. I think the last 4 minutes in a close game, your energy kind of shifts to like, if you're guarding a dude, you're like, all right, he's about to come at us with everything he's got, and you got to stand in there and fight to get your stops and rebound and at least make it tough. Some of those guys, like some of the guys that I played against, was like, God, like now knowing now what I know now, it's like, all right, you did the best that you could, but
I got a specific question for that, but this might be an old head question of me. I personally don't agree with people saying that nobody tries on defense. I just think the offensive game and the players that play offense are such like unbelievable players. But do you find personally, Isaiah, that there's maybe a lack of emphasis or even pride on the defensive end with players today?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just about like what you're being taught. Yeah, NBA is one thing. Like they play 82 games, so I can't comment on that. I've never played 82 games. I'm sure you see it when it's playoff time. Those guys are laying it on the line. College, I think that you have to compete. That's kind of how you get on the floor. There's rarely a case where a guy's that good offensively that he doesn't have to guard. And obviously, Europe, they take defense really seriously. So I don't think so. I think that these guys are laying it on the line. I just think you're right. Like offenses are getting better. They're finding ways to make it tough on guys, and you just got to kind of adapt and keep working that way.
Yeah. So you've had the privilege now of playing for Tony Bennett and now coaching with
Yep.
Tony Bennett. What's the difference? What are some of the biggest differences you notice?
Well, I said this when I got back. Coaches do a lot more than I thought that they did when I was playing. It was like because you wouldn't see them. I would come to practice. I would go to lift. Didn't really interact with them because they weren't there for lift. They would be preparing, which I didn't know that they were doing. Go to practice.
Just rolling the ball out there. Get going, Isaiah.
Go to practice. I'll be on the court 2 hours and 30 or hour, 45 minutes early, 30 minutes early, whatever. See them out there. Finish practice 20, 30 minutes after. See them there. Go home. So I figured that's what they did too. They would come 30 minutes before, somehow have like what we were gonna do, and then go home after. And then I figured out quickly, like they do a lot more, especially, I guess I only know college, but like recruiting and like not setting up official visits and making sure that, this is taken care of and that's taken care of. They work hard. They work hard. Not that saying that I thought they didn't, but I just didn't realize how much stuff like coaches actually do. And not a big amount of it is always X's and O's. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes ops things that are being taken care of. So, but I mean, working for Coach Bennett is like a dream. He gave me a lot of freedom because I played in a system and like, kind of know what he wants from guys to kind of let me explore and figure out myself. He's secure in who he is. So it's not like I was going to go out there and mess it up. But it's been a dream. It's the same staff for the most part that I had when I was here. And so like, I know these guys and they, it's really cool. It's a really cool thing for me to be able to do.
That's great. Absolutely. So let's focus a little attention now on this upcoming season,
Okay.
because I know a lot of our listeners are excited to see how UVA moves forward. You had mentioned a guy like Reese Beekman, but
Yeah.
let me start with this. And it may be too early to answer this, Isaiah, but what is the identity going to be for this 23-24 Cavaliers team? I suppose first, does that change year to year at all? Is that consistent? But what does that identity look like this upcoming season?
I think every year you get new people, and so some things change. But I think that as long as Coach Bennett is our head coach and we are who we are, I think we're going to have to guard. Like I think that's always been a spot where we try to hang our hats, and this group is doing a good job of. We got a lot of new faces of trying to pick things up quickly. But I think that that'll always be a big part of our identity is like we have to play defense and defend as a team and, cover for each other. So
names and faces change. Guards don't though, baby. Guarding doesn't, I should say.
Yeah, no doubt.
There you go. I call this the Sule Boom question. Okay. The reason I call it that is because I was fortunate enough to talk to David Miller, who's on Xavier's staff.
Okay.
And I talked to him last season. And what I'm always intrigued and curious to know about are names that the mainstream, that maybe even guys like me aren't super familiar with, but come January, February, we're going to know their name. And I asked this to David Miller and he said, Sule Boom. And I was like, all right, I'll write that down. And Sule Boom exploded.
Yeah.
So I think, and I'm not taking anything away from Reese Beekman. He is a wonderful player, but he's here. I know who Reese Beekman is. Isaiah, can you give me some other guys that we may not know about today, but I'm telling you, come January, February, they are going to be contributing at a high level?
It's interesting. I mean, it's feels early, like they're all new and they all, some bright spots and some things that we have to work on. But it's interesting because I do think that Reese is going to take a big jump, like bigger than I think people are expecting. Like he's just worked really hard, and he's kind of our leader now in a way where it's like, before you had Kihei and him, like he is kind of the leader. So I'm going to say Reese because I think it'll be fun to watch him this year kind of take on a team of new guys and see how he handles that. So
that is equally as fun, by the way, to witness and watch.
Yeah.
Are those older guys. It's like how much more can they give to this program?
Right.
And then, that insane next level will be interesting to watch.
You normally see like your guys who played, like I remember the guys who play in their first year, like you expect to see a jump out of them, and you expect it for yourself too. So it'll be fun to see those guys, the guys who played a little bit, kind of take that jump in your second year where you're starting to feel comfortable in the system and what coach wants and all that good stuff. So
I'll tell you what, it might be a shock to my system when I see a Virginia Cavaliers game and I don't see Kihei Clark.
I know, right?
It's going to be like, I don't know. I might have an out-of-body experience, be like, where's Kihei?
I know. When first couple of practices after the season, this past season, and we're working out, and you're like, man, like you miss seeing him already because he is that piece and that guy. So
Isaiah, the ACC is loaded yet again. What makes a team find success in the ACC? Your team found so much success when you were playing. Virginia, and I mentioned this, even now as a coach, I would bet the mortgage that you guys are going to be successful. What makes a team find success in this conference?
It's a good question. I think consistency, like night in, night out, we kind of knew what we were going to get from each other. And I think that you got to have that, because if inconsistent at all, like you get up for big games or, top half of the league, but you don't get up for the rest, you will struggle. Like I feel like that's a big thing. And then obviously knowing who you are, like that identity piece, if you can kind of figure that out, and obviously you got to have talent, you got to compete, but if you can figure out those two things, you're going to give yourself at least a good shot to go into some of these tough arenas and figure it out. So, and it's obviously important to protect home.
I always find it funny the last couple of years, I feel like people are saying as a whole, the ACC is down, and I'm like, someone's going to the Final Four from the ACC. You got Miami, you got Duke and Carolina last year. Like someone's going to the Final Four out of the ACC, man.
Yeah, no, it's a great league to play in. Like I know it's changing and stuff, but it's amazing.
Yeah, you might have to start booking flights out to the Bay Area.
Those guys. Who knows?
Yeah, it would have been nicer if Ty was still with the Warriors. I think he's in Cleveland now, but that would have been fun.
See those guys, yeah. They'll always love when that happens.
Yeah. So Isaiah, I'm going to get you out of here on some quick hitters. Let's have some fun here.
All right.
You mentioned a little bit about some of the different environments, right?
Yeah.
You're going to this defending champions in Poland. You're like, I've played in some big time arenas.
Yeah.
What's the toughest college environment you've played in?
I'm
talking these fans are on top of you, yelling nasty things, rude.
Okay.
Loud.
Obviously Duke is its own animal, but everybody knows that. So I'm going to try to get some that maybe people. My first year, we played at Louisville in the Yum Center, and they beat us out on a buzzer beater. There's a game they beat us on a buzzer beater, but for that entire game, I was like, oh my, because I wasn't expecting, it was Montrez, like I wasn't expecting that, and it might have been their senior night. It was insane in there. So I always liked playing there. And then Pitt was good when I was in like the zoo. The zoo was, I remember they had paper with like family names, girlfriend, whatever you had, they had it. And so that was like a fun environment to play in, just because like they weren't crossing the line, but it was fun, like that stuff. And then lastly, we played Iowa State I think it was in Chicago, and I didn't understand how close or how well Iowa State traveled. And we're pulling up to the game on the bus, and I'm like, man, like, there's a lot of red. Like, where are, like, on the map? Where is everything? And one of my teams was like, no, this is about to be insane. And that was a fun one too. So I give it a 3.
Those, I mean, look, Cyclones fans are crazy. I live in Chicago right now. I think it's about a 5-hour drive.
Okay.
To Ames, yeah. So
They were in there.
I believe it. I believe that. Yeah. So Louisville, Pitt, Iowa State, that tracks.
Virginia Tech also for the rivalry, and that place is fun to play too. So
I feel like the camera angle there in Virginia Tech, like it's just very steep. I don't know, man.
The arena's like that. It goes straight up.
Yeah.
And they play.
So I'm not crazy there.
Enter the Sandman, and it's a good environment too.
Okay. All right. Toughest player you've had to defend?
It's Jayson Tatum for sure. Duke had a run of foremen that was unbelievable, but he's the best. Actually, I'll tell you a story. I tell people, like, I never told this out loud.
Hey man, I'm a Celtics fan too, so please continue.
All right. So you've seen the video with Jayson Tatum where Coach K called him soft St. Louis kid. That was on us. And so I want to tell you the other side of the story. So we're playing Duke, and this is late into my junior year. And I think in my head I have a shot for ACC Defensive Player of the Year, which was like my dream. When I got it my last year, but like it was a dream of mine to get that just because that was my MO, or that's what I wanted. And I'm having a good year defensively. I'm having a solid year. And we're about to play Duke. And I'm telling Jack, who is my roommate, like, if I can not stop Tatum, because I knew, but like if I can do well against Tatum, I'm going to give myself a good shot to get this award. Like, I just have to really lock in defensively. And we go, and he's like, yeah, like he's like, yeah, for sure. Like, you got it. Next day, game comes, we go out for layup lines and captains go, and I see him in the layup line. And I'm like, wait, that dude's huge. Like they put his height down, I think, like he's huge. But I'm like, all right, don't worry about that. Like, you got to lock in. You want this. First half goes, and he's kind of not chilling, but he's not being as aggressive as I thought.
This is in Charlottesville, by the way, right?
In okay. Charlottesville, yeah.
All right.
And so I told Jack at halftime, I'm like, I think he's got 6 at half. And I'm like, Jack, another half, and I can do it. Like, I'm there, bro. And Jack is like, I think you're doing good. Like, you're giving yourself a chance for winning the game. Like, but I'm like, I've guarded like other guys who are like lottery picks already this year. And I'm like, if I can do this, like I can do it. And obviously, because K rips into him at halftime and pisses him off, the dude comes out and gets 28 in the second half. And it was like, some of the shots were like, I couldn't do it any better. Like, I can't play any better deep. The dude, he doesn't see me. Like, he's in his zone right now. And it was like, we lost the game. It was awful. It was hard. Like, I was so embarrassed. And then, like, now every time somebody asks me that question, or like Jack Salt, who I keep in touch with, he's coming to visit me in Charlottesville. And he just sent me a text saying, like, hey, I'll be there, yada, yada, yada. And I said, all right, man, cool. And he just sends me now random pictures or gifs of Jayson Tatum. Like, it's the running joke on Charlottesville, but he's for sure, like, that dude was incredible. So there's the other side of that story.
What a story. Was Tony Bennett in the locker room being like, you're playing well, you're hard as hell from Wilburn, Georgia? No,
not at all. But now when I tell him the story, he laughs at it because it's a funny story. But like,
yeah,
man, he took that away from me. But no, you could tell then, like, the Duke had a run of Justice Winslow, Ingram, Tatum, and Marvin Bagley while I was in college, and it was. And then next year was Zion. Thankfully, I graduated. Jack had to do with that. So.
Oh my goodness, what a story! I'm going to tell you right now that one's getting clipped and put out on Twitter. That's an awesome story.
That dude, man, he was good.
Special player for sure. What's more nerve-wracking to you, playing or coaching?
Coaching, 100%. Because when you're playing, you don't really feel, like you still have control. Coaching, you have no control. You have control, but you don't have any like physical, like I can't go out there and get a rebound or try to get a stop. So coaching for sure, like it it's a different feeling. That's hard. I see why why people say it's so hard. It's hard to do that and prepare and just tell your guys you got to do it. So for sure, coaching to me
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah. Learning from the best, clearly.
Yeah,
Um,
be calm. I'm like, what?
yeah. Tony Bennett does
I'm like
there's a
jittering the
cool
whole game. Like
stupid.
my first couple games, I just jittered the whole game. Like, dude, be still, man. Sit still and relax.
Unbelievable. This one comes from some UVA fans, some fan questions.
Cool.
Your first initial reaction to Kyle Guy's man bun?
No, so that's what I'm telling you. When I saw him at top 100 camp, I was like, yo, this guy looks like a fifth grader, man. Like, what are we talking about? But when our first game we played was in Spain and for the foreign tour. And that was the first time I'd ever seen, because we practiced, but I've seen him play and I was like, oh, you can have whatever hair you want if you play like that. Like that dude was good. So yeah, when I first saw it, I was like, what the? But when I saw him play, I was like, all right.
Man, those knocking down those 3 free throws. I'm sure Kyle Guy can literally do whatever haircut,
whatever he wants.
Can you provide a common misconception for these 3 guys? All right. So the public doesn't know about them, but based on your experience and how you think the general public views them, what's like a common misconception? Or maybe just take us behind the curtain of the true character or, tendencies of these guys. Let me start with Malcolm Brogdon.
Well, I think, I don't know. I don't know what the public thinks. I mean, for him, he was like,
I think of Malcolm Brogdon as a very quiet, goes about his business kind of guy.
I think he is that to a certain extent. Like he's very professional, super hard work. Even when we were in high school, you could tell like he had the same routine and he'd do it every day. But he's also like, if you're close to him and you're in a circle, he's fun. Like he's fun to hang out with. He jokes, he plays around. He was great as a teammate and as an older brother kind of on the team. So I think that's kind of spot on. He's hardworking, but he also, he's not standoffish or anything like that. He's awesome.
Gotcha. Ty Jerome. And maybe we can pivot it to things we may not know about these guys. Ty Jerome.
Ty is, I guess you could, but like ultra competitive. Like practices would be, I don't think we were ever on the same team in practice just because of how like we would go at each other and it helped the practices out, but ultra competitive. He's like, I don't know if people understand like how much he wills himself into like being as good as he is. Like he works incredibly hard, but like super, super competitive. He's one of the greatest teammates I've ever had. So
last one, DeAndre Hunter.
Dre, personality wise, he's like quiet. Like he's not the big, or he's fun when you're with him and you know him. But like if you saw him outside, he's kind of shy and to himself. But again, another guy who's like, I don't know if people understand like how good he really is. From like, I don't know. I think the dude's incredible.
You talk about Jayson Tatum. He was going toe to toe with him in that first round series.
He should have. That's what I say. He should have been playing and not. Oh, he should have been. Oh, he wasn't in school yet. I was wondering why I was out there. Or was he? No, he was. He was just redshirt, I think. But yeah, that dude like gifted, and obviously people are seeing it now. But man, what a player!
I got to look back at his shooting percentage in that first round series because I was like, golly, can we just finish up with these Hawks right now? Trae Young's bombing from deep.
That's always been a fun series. Like when I was a kid and I lived in Atlanta, we would play the Celtics 1 seed versus 8 seed with like KG. I just remember like, man, those were fun games. And obviously Boston, we get them to 7, but it's in the Garden and we don't have the shots.
Zaza Pachulia, baby, Game 7, baby. I remember that. Exactly. I remember that for sure. Last couple ones here, and then I'll let you go. But can you build your all-time UVA starting 5?
This is my personal one, right?
It's your personal one, yeah.
All right. Well, obviously Ralph has to play the 5, yeah. Or am I doing just
No. All time. You don't need to look to me for validation. I want to hear your personal UVA.
Is the 5. You can't have a team without that. Then I'm going to be biased. Ty is my point guard. So I have my 1 and my 5. Malcolm is on the team. You can be the 2. DeAndre is on the team. Oh man, so I don't know if Dre's going to play the 3 or the 4.
Put yourself on there too if you want.
No, I'm definitely not on the team. uh, who do I want for the last? That last fight is a tough one. The guys might have to play one-on-one for it. I gotta give somebody else some love. I can't do all the players I play with. I'll go to Joey Harris. Joey Hoops.
Joe Harris, sharpshooter.
Yeah.
Last week, I was watching a lot of college football documentaries. The Florida Gators doc came out. We got the Johnny Manziel documentary. We got the HBO doc about Bishop Sycamore. So it got me thinking. I was like, I want to see some college basketball docs being produced. You cannot use your teams, Isaiah. It can be some other UVA team if you want.
Okay.
But are there some college documentaries? Because you're a fan of the game. Are there some college documentaries of teams growing up, players growing up that you'd love to see, like an in-depth documentary perspperspective?
I'd love to see the Billy Donovan Florida team because they had so many like NBA players. They had clips up at one point on YouTube of like their practices, and those were wars. Like I would love to see just how that all worked from the coaching to the players. I think that would be sick. And obviously I think the Villanova one would probably be pretty good too. Just because you look at like Team USA now and there are guys who, I don't know what they were ranked or whatever, but I think those would be probably two pretty cool ones to see, just at least of late.
Literally the first one that came to my mind was the back-to-back Gators. I mean, the talent coming back, it was crazy.
Incredible. Yeah, exactly. The coming back part, like you don't see that anymore. That would be cool to see.
Yeah. All right, Isaiah, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to get you out of here on this last one. Okay. It's a segment that we ask every one of our guests, and it's called Bring Them Up on Stage. I'm going to ask you to bring someone else up on stage. Is there anyone that you can refer me to reach out, bug them like I was bugging you, but share some stories on this podcast? Anyone, a colleague in college basketball that you think would be willing to jump on?
Who do I know? Well, I think you should try to get like you talk about, I don't know. I feel like I don't know that many people, and maybe you know what? I don't know him, but you should try to get Tum Tum Naren. I think he would be a cool one to have on, just because I think they were just saying he's starting for the national team with the Bahamas. He's obviously coached. He played at Michigan State. I may know somebody who knows him, but I think he would be a cool one to hear just what, his journey and what he has to say.
I appreciate that. I hope I didn't catch you blindsided there. I used to love Lou Rawls, Tum Tum Naren. Yeah, Michigan State. But I'll reach out to him. His journey's equally as remarkable and interesting as well. But Isaiah, really want to thank you so much for jumping on and sharing some incredible stories. I think I'm going to be thinking about that Tatum story for a few days moving forward.
Yeah, unbelievable. Coach K, you killed me. Yeah, so
I love it. Isaiah Wilkins, thank you so much again. And best of luck this upcoming season. Cannot wait to see you guys play. All right. Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me.